It began as headaches, then blurred vision, and then silence in his eyes. At first, no one thought much of it. A boy complaining of pain behind his temples, a few dizzy spells, the kind of things parents often brush aside, hoping it's nothing serious. But soon, the signs became undeniable. His world was dimming, slowly, quietly, and cruelly. He carried his school bag each morning, still smiling, still dreaming. But with each step, something unseen was already stealing his future. They say danger announces itself with a roar. But sometimes, it arrives quietly, standing tall, metallic, disguised as progress. Near their new home stood a tower. To many, it promised connection, opportunity, the future. To this child, it became something else entirely. Think about it for a moment. Could this happen to your child? Could this happen to mine? The family moved into their new apartment with hearts full of hope. For them, it was a fresh start, a chance to rise above the struggles of the past. The mother carried baskets into the home, humming softly, her face alive with quiet pride. The father followed, steady and determined, holding a rolled mat and a bundle of clothes. The children laughed and ran ahead, their joy bouncing against the walls of their new home. From the window, the boy pressed his face against the glass, gazing out with wide, curious eyes. Neighbors whispered their warnings quietly. The tower, it is too close. But his mother brushed it off. She believed safety came with progress. That night, warmth filled the room. Candles flickered, and the family laughed around their first dinner in the new home. But outside, in the darkness beyond their window, the tower stood, tall, silent, unblinking. It began subtly, just a complaint of pain, a small hand pressed against his forehead as though trying to keep something from spilling out. "Mama, my head hurts," he whispered. At first, his mother smiled and told him it was nothing. Maybe schoolwork, maybe tiredness. Children always found reasons to complain. But the pain did not stop. Each morning it returned, like a shadow that refused to leave him. At school, he began rubbing his eyes, blinking hard, as if the world around him was becoming too sharp, too bright, too heavy to hold. His friends laughed when he squinted at the chalkboard, thinking it was just another child being silly. But inside, he was frightened. Something was changing. At home he confessed, "Mama, the light feels too strong." His words carried fear, though he tried to sound brave. The mother sighed. Perhaps it was the long hours at school. Perhaps it was bad sleep. She wrapped him in her arms, hoping comfort would be enough. But as she rocked him gently, the tower outside flickered with red lights. Silent, watchful, a presence that no one could ignore forever. The days that followed were heavy. What began as small headaches soon became something more. Nosebleeds staining the boy's pillow, fatigue that weighed down his young body, and dizzy spells that made the world tilt beneath his feet. His energy, once endless, seemed to vanish. The boy who used to run freely in the yard now stumbled after only a few steps, his laughter growing faint. Worried, his mother carried him to the local clinic. She hoped for answers, for medicine, for relief. But the doctor barely looked up. "It is only migraine," he said, waving his hand, dismissing her fears. The words "only migraine" echoed in her heart. But deep inside she knew. A mother always knows. This was not ordinary. This was not passing. This was something darker. That night, silence filled their home. The boy lay on his mat, chest rising and falling in fragile rhythm. His mother could not sleep. She sat in the corner, praying softly, watching each breath as though it might be the last. Each small sound made her flinch, the rustle of fabric, the boy's shallow cough, the faint hum of the tower outside. Her heart beat with fear, as though keeping him alive through sheer will. The world around her kept moving. Villagers laughed, the market bustled, the tower's red lights flickered as always. But inside their home, time slowed, stretching into nights of dread and mornings of uncertainty. And still, the clinic had no answers. The whispers of neighbors grew louder. But the mother's prayers grew louder too, her hope clashing against the fear that each day brought. The boy's struggles could no longer hide in silence. At school, where his future was meant to grow, the signs of decline appeared before everyone. One morning, as the teacher wrote on the board, the boy squinted harder than ever. His small hands pressed against his eyes, his face twisted in confusion and pain. When asked to read aloud, he stumbled forward, nearly tripping over a chair. Gasps filled the room. The teacher froze, the chalk still in her hand. The children whispered among themselves, uneasy. Something was not right. Something was happening to their friend. The teacher rushed to him, kneeling at his side. His small voice cracked through tears. "I can't see. Mama, I can't see." The school sent for his mother immediately. When she arrived, her heart broke at the sight of her son trembling, his body weak, his voice fading. By the time they reached home, the village had already begun to murmur. Whispers traveled quickly from one ear to another, rising like a wind no one could contain. "It's the tower, it's the tower," they repeated, voices hushed yet sharp. Some pointed toward the sky, others shook their heads, fear painted across their faces. As clouds gathered above the village, the tower seemed to grow taller, its red lights flickering like eyes in a storm. When the whispers grew too loud, the family turned to hospitals. Perhaps somewhere, someone would finally explain why their child's world was closing in. The local hospital was the first stop. Its walls were old, its equipment scarce. The doctors looked him over, but found nothing unusual. "It is stress. Rest. He will be fine." The mother's heart did not rest. She knew the pain was deeper. The dizziness, the blurred vision, the trembling hands, it was not stress. It was something stealing him. So they traveled farther, to the general hospital. Its long corridors stretched endlessly, filled with footsteps and echoes of children crying. Here, tests began. Machines hummed. Needles pricked his skin. Charts filled with numbers his parents could not understand. The boy's eyes followed his mother, searching for comfort. And though she smiled, her heart was breaking. Each test ended with confusion, with doctors whispering in hallways. Finally, they were told, "Go to the National Hospital. The largest. The finest." If answers could be found, they would be found there. The journey was long. Days bled into nights in waiting rooms. The mother never let go of his hand. His father paced in silence, carrying hope like a weight too heavy for his shoulders. When the tests ended, the doctor returned. His face was heavy, painted in lines of sorrow. He sat across from them and shook his head. Then came the words every parent fears: his optic nerves are permanently damaged. The room fell silent. A silence so heavy, it seemed to swallow every sound of the hospital. Hope cracked, replaced by an ache deeper than words. The diagnosis crushed every last hope. For days, the mother could not hold her tears. She wrapped her face in her shawl and wept where no one could see, but grief spilled anyway. She whispered the question no one dared answer. How could a place of safety become a place of blindness? The neighbors began to gather, drawn not by curiosity but by sorrow. They stood in silence outside her home, their faces painted with shame. No one knew what to say. No one knew who to blame. Yet, the tower rose above them all, tall, cold, glowing with its silent hum, as though mocking their helplessness. A folk tale rose in whispers, older than the steel of towers, carried from the elders. When the drum beats near the lion's den, no child dances safely. The mother lifted her tear-stained face to the sky. She had once trusted that progress meant safety, that towers brought connection, not curses. Now, she saw only betrayal. Her wail echoed through the night. It was not just the cry of one mother, but of every parent who feared what unseen shadows might take from their children. Grief had shattered her heart, but in its place, a seed of anger was planted. The tower was no longer a symbol of progress. It had become a beast. And beasts, she knew, could be fought. In the silence that followed the storm of grief, a heavier question lingered. How many parents truly know the dangers standing so close to their homes? We trust the ground we live on, the roofs we sleep beneath, the air we breathe. But what if the very things we welcome into our villages are the ones silently reshaping our lives? The boy now walked with a cane, guided not by his own eyes, but by the steady hand of his mother. Together, they moved forward, though every step carried the weight of what had been stolen. It is here that the old folk tales return, carrying warnings wrapped in poetry. The tree that grows too close to the hut will shade the sun forever. The tower, like that tree, had been planted too close. What was meant to give life instead swallowed the light. And once the shadow falls, it may never rise again. Yet, as the boy's steps echoed softly on the earth, a new truth emerged. Danger ignored is danger multiplied. Parents must question, must listen, must guard their children not only from what is seen, but from what hides in plain sight. The night had been long, but as every elder knows, even the darkest sky must one day surrender to the sunrise. This story is not just his. It is a warning for us all. Every parent must watch. Every parent must act. Because silence is not safety. If one child can lose his sight in the shadow of a tower, how many more will follow? If we remain blind ourselves? Every parent must watch.